Chapter 9. Rumours from the River. When the caravan reached the river called the Herdman's Flow, they looked to the north and saw their nation of Havamir on the other side. The north road crossed the river as a stone bridge and entered the town of Galasang. Rafts, boats and barges rested on the town's shore, and the rivermen who crewed the vessels lounged on the bank, smoking their pipes and looking through each other's collections of flotsam. There were boats floating downstream, boats paddling upstream, and strings of travellers going north and south across the bridge. The sounding of seashell horns announced the coming of the caravan, and along the walls the town natives raised the banners bearing the emblem of the sunrise. On the river's edge there stood an immense bathhouse of deep orange stone. The caravan crossed the bridge, and their road led them directly to the great doors of the bathhouse. The doors opened before them, and the women went down one hall and the men went down the other. Inside there were high domed ceilings and shallow pools. The air was filled with steam and spicy scents. The pools of cool water cost nothing, but the warm pools cost 12 rins. For 12 more one could buy herbs for scrubbing. All were to partake in the ritual washings before they left the town and entered Havamir. No one wanted foreign dust to fall on the young boys of their nation, lest it give them wanderlust and make them dream of faraway places. Long ago mothers had begged that such dust be kept from their lands, so their sons would not grow up to leave them. The travellers of that time honoured their request, and the bathing custom was kept ever since. Once the caravan was clean, including the animals and wagons, which had been doused with buckets of water, it left through Galasang's gates and came back onto the north road. A land of green hills and pastures lay before them. Distant hamlets sat on the hilltops or rested in the vales, their chapels to Ahatho sending up white spires. A brisk wind from the north greeted the caravan, and the people breathed it in gratefully. Dust from the road met their feet, but it did not bother them, for it was dust of their homeland. When night fell, the caravan encamped in a large pasture, half a day's journey north of the Herdman's Flow. In the middle of the camp sat the conclave tent. The conclave tent was not set up every night, but only when the Trishans desired to hold a gathering or a discussion. It was very spacious inside and lit with many lanterns. Long tapestries hung down to the ground, dividing the inside of the tent into an inner and outer circle. 3 seats covered in furs had been placed in the inner circle. Rain Coracle and Rain Garifin sat upon 2 of them, but the other was empty. As the Rains waited, they leaned in close to a metal bowl with burning coals in it. The wind had grown stronger and held more of the crispness of autumn, so the Rains had called for heat. When Queen Maris entered the tent by the ushering of servants, Coracal and Garifin rose to their feet and bowed to her. The Rains produced their speaking totems and put them in a clay bowl near their seats. As was the custom of the conclave tent, Maris took out her speaking totem and placed it there as well. Because the bowl was large and not full, Maris's totem did not sit on top of the other 2, but on the same level, at the bottom of the bowl. "Forgive me if I have made you wait long," Maris apologized. "A master does not ask forgiveness of a servant," Coracal replied. "It is we who have invited you here. Please sit with us and find comfort." Coracal called for timber wine, and the servants brought out goblets to them. The Queen and the Rains poured libations to Ahatho. Then they also poured a tribute to the soldiers who had died in the Hargwar attacks, and to Halrith. "This is the timber wine from Halrith's wake," said Coracal. "We will drink it in honour of him. Some, such as Lord Garifin, believe we should have poured what we did not drink at the wake into the Asetse out of reverence for the dead, but that would bring a great offence to King Mokulis, for he generously gave of his casks." Had she thought about it, Morris would have also liked to have poured the timber wine into the river, anything to show more honour to Hallerith. But she nodded in agreement to what Coracall had said, for she did not want to start their meeting with a minor disagreement. Morris's fingers began rubbing the cord tied around her wrist. Coracall sensed her apprehension and responded by raising his goblet and saying, "To the memory of Hallerith." They all raised their goblets and took a drink. The rains lit their pipes, and plumes of smoke came out of their mouths as they spoke. "This journey has cost us in blood," said Coracall, "but setting foot on our homeland brings comfort. The egg is in the nest, as they say. Though it has yet to hatch," Garifin noted, "we still have some road before us before we reach Terracaste. It is hard to imagine what misfortune can touch us while we are here in Havamere. The Urgan was a wild land, but our homeland is tame." "Do not talk with such assurance while it is dark out. You do not want an ill spirit to hear. You will goad it into bringing mischief upon us." "That is island talk," Coracall replied. "Am I not from the islands? Will I not produce the fruit of my people? The hurricane tree does not grow the hessel herb, nor do I talk the way the mainlanders do." Morris sipped her timber wine methodically as she listened to the two Rains talk of the road and the weather, topics that found their way into nearly every conversation along the caravan's journey. And as they talked, they reclined further and further into the furs. They sat as if they were passing time in the comfort of old friends. Morris began to wonder why they had invited her there that night, whether they wanted something from her or not, but then she thought it rude to question their motives. Heron thought in such ways, and she did not want to be as suspicious as he. Coracall seemed to sense this, for he cleared his throat and shifted the conversation from road conditions to more important matters. He sat up more in his seat and took on a serious tone. "Today at the baths, many of the elders of Galasang come to sit with Rain Garifin and me. They had much to tell us, things we believe you should hear, my queen. Word, as we expected, has flown faster than this caravan. The elders knew of Hallerith's death long before our arrival, and they had learned of it from the river men. The elders also knew of the Legender and his coming to Havamere. They asked us why the Legender would come to our lands if he had committed such an evil crime against our nation." "What crime is that?" Morris asked. "The murder of Hallerith." "The Legender, a murderer? I was told that the Draymorn with the poison arrow killed Hallerith." "And you were rightly told. But the elders heard differently from the rivermen. As the saying goes, words and meat both spoil when they travel far. The elders were told of a great fight between the Arethias, for it began when Solanan struck Hallerith with his tail. The elders were also told of how the Legender appeared out of nowhere to join the battle and win glory for himself. In the end, the Legender killed Hallerith by bringing the city wall down on his neck." Morris nodded gravely. "What did the elders have to say when you corrected them?" The Rains looked to one another, but did not answer. "You did correct them, did you not?" Morris asked warily. "It is true that their version of the story is with error," Coracall replied, nodding sympathetically. "And the rivermen are to blame. They speak of what they do not know. They are like the fish in the old story who talked of the ways of birds. But some people have taken this version to be the truth. Surely it is spread across Havamere, perhaps as far north as Terracaste and the islands. But we cannot counter what has been said. We told you what we had learned in the Underhollow, for you are our queen. But we will not tell any others, not even our fellow Rains on the council. Do not forget that King Mercius has us under oath not to mention the Draymorn, and without that critical detail it is difficult to speak the truth." Coracall took a long draw from his pipe and blew the smoke, out of his mouth slowly. "Breaking the oath that Heavenmere has made to Mercius could bring the wrath of heaven down upon us." Gerafin trembled. "We dare not tell the true story until Mercius permits us. For the good of Heavenmere, we dare not tell."
"What are we to do for the Legender until then?" Maris asked.
"Nothing," Korakal replied. "The people cannot hear you speaking for a murderer, or offering him any form of defence. They will think vile things of you if you do."
"But he is not a murderer," she said.
"That is true, but the people believe what is false. When the people believe what is false, and when there is no way to the truth, the queen must adapt. You're a young queen," Gerafin added, "a growing bloom of your position, full of what you could be, yet fragile. If you go against the people now, while you're new and vulnerable, they will defile your name and speak treacherous things in secret."
"But the Legender saved my life," Maris murmured.
"He may have, but you need to think of your own survival. If he truly takes himself to be your guardian and the guardian of Heavenmere, then he will understand what the full measure of your preservation demands."
"Gerafin is right. It is your survival, my queen, that concerns us.
Take our counsel and leave the Legender to his own ends."
"You mean for me to abandon him?" Maris asked.
"We only wish to see you survive, and with our counsel you will do more than that. You will thrive. My queen, that is why we have asked you to speak with us this night. We offer our service to be your hand and to be your mouth, to aid you in your weaknesses and to give rise to your strengths. Will you take our offer in these trying times?"
Maris kept silent, but her thoughts were stirring. If she kept to her confessed plan at Halerith's gravesite, if she gave up her crown and a throne, there would be no struggle to survive, no need for personal counsellors. She would resign and spend the rest of her days in tranquillity. But what of the Legender, she thought. As queen, she could defend him and repay her debt, but without her throne and crown she could do nothing. The Rains watched their queen as she stared pensively into her goblet. Korakal was about to repeat his question, but suddenly the curtains in the inner circle flung open. Heron entered and came to stand before them. His face was hard and stern, and his eyes shot to the Rains. A twinge of fear flickered on their faces as though they had been caught doing something wrong, but then they quickly put on stern expressions to match Heron's.
"The hour is late," Heron stated, "and our queen needs a rest. I trust there will be no complaint if she takes her leave. Her escort and I will wait for her outside." Before his words could be challenged, Heron turned and walked out of the tent. Maris looked to the Rains, but their eyes did not meet hers. Gerafin looked to the floor, and Korakal stared at the curtains through which Heron had left, his eyes narrowed and jaw clenched. Though Heron's sudden arrival had startled her, Maris found his coming as a relief, for it gave her an excuse to avoid the Rains' question. So, rising from her place, she took her speaking totem from the bowl and bid the Rains good night.
"Thank you for your concerns. I will think on what you have said."
The two of them bowed to her as she left, but once she was gone, they returned to their seats and puffed on their pipes, their faces dark with displeasure.